People do not want to have a president who attacks Mexicans, attacks immigrants.
They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists.
Attacks women.
What Donald Trump said is wrong.
I cherish women.
He's becoming a jackass.
We're led by stupid people.
Donald domination.
Ladies and gentlemen, President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
All right, thanks for joining us. We can all agree that the election is certainly exciting much earlier than usual. And face it, it's because of Donald Trump. Inspired or disgusted, he has many of you thinking or arguing, and he has the media in high gear. Now, he got to where he is in the race to this point by being an outsider with a lot of fame and furor, but no real shot, who then shocked the political establishment by becoming the face of the GOP's discontent. But tonight you're going to see a different Donald Trump, a front runner, someone with something to lose, with a growing weight of expectation to not just be loud, but to be a leader for his party and maybe even beyond. So tonight, listen to what he does and does not say about immigration, trade, jobs, ISIS, all the big issues, and even the straight talk he has for the Pope. And you will get a look at the personal as well, how he feels about his family being exposed to the toxic political environment and the role his wife may play in the days ahead. Now, this conversation couldn't come at a better time. Our new CNN ORC poll shows Trump within striking distance of Hillary Clinton, where the presidential election held today, just 6 points behind the Democratic frontrunner. So, you think you know what he's going to say about that poll? Huge. Prepare to be surprised. So we have the polls and politics, we have policy, and then we have the personal. They're all P's, and we'll jump around as seems right to you, okay?
That's fine.
The latest CNN ORC poll, you don't get more accurate than that. It has you for the first time considered competitive in the general election. 6 points separating you and Hillary Clinton. You must be shocked.
Well, it's not my focus right now. Right now, I have 16 other people that I'm looking at, and that's not my focus, but indirectly it probably is. And I think that Hillary's going to have a hard time being in the election based on what's happening with the emails, the servers, maybe even the speeches. I think it's going to be a very hard thing for her to overcome. When I look, Chris, at what happened with Petraeus on a much smaller level, great general, wonderful guy, everybody loves him, and they've destroyed his life over much less. I mean, in terms of confidentiality, in terms of importance, much less and far fewer. And it would seem hard to think that somebody could have a much worse situation than him and escape.
Well, the factual distinction would be that that was classified information with Petraeus, and he knew it and he used it. Here, we do not know yet that Hillary Clinton was doing the wrong thing or mishandling classified information.
But it looks like it was, and it certainly looks like it was very high-level information. And what's the purpose of it? You know, it's always skirting the edge. What's the purpose of it? In the end, she had something in mind. She didn't want people to know or something. But what is she doing? Why is she doing it?
You think this is going to really hurt her a long time?
Oh, I think it's devastating. I think it's devastating for the election, but I think her bigger problem is not the election. I think her bigger problem is going to be the criminal problem.
Really? You really think that this could turn out to be a criminal situation for Hillary Clinton? Because there's no reference of that from the investigators.
I don't think I'm the only one. I mean, the FBI is involved. They only do criminal. I don't think I'm the only one. Now, maybe it's somebody on her staff. But look, it's either criminal or it's incompetent. It's one or the other. There's either gross incompetence or criminal, and neither's acceptable to be president.
I feel like you're skipping the headline. You're 6 points from Hillary Clinton. Nobody would have expected that. You're kind of glossing over it. Why? Shouldn't you be saying 6 points? I can't believe I'm not ahead.
Well, that's one thing I could say, I guess. You know, I think we'll do very well against Hillary. Hillary's record as Secretary of State was a disaster. She was in favor, totally in favor of the Iraq War, which is obviously not a good soundbite. I think we're going to do very well. And as you know, I've been against it for years, the Iraq War. I said, you're going to decimate Iraq. Iran will take over the Middle East and take over Iraq, which is exactly what's happening. And somebody's going to come and take over the leftover oil. And who did that turn out to be? ISIS. So if you look at 2004, exactly what I said happened. So call it vision. I have to call it vision because I'm trying to get elected. First time in my life I'm trying to get elected, right? I'm a politician all of a sudden. But there was a certain vision. I've gotten a lot of credit for it. They made a terrible mistake. And then they made a terrible mistake the way they got out. And in my opinion, they made an even worse mistake not keeping the oil. because ISIS took the oil and Iran is going to take the rest
People
of it.
want it out, though, Mr. Trump. And they didn't want forces there. They don't want forces there now. If you wanted to do what you sometimes suggest, which is take the oil, that would take troops, that would take danger, that would take blood and treasure.
Well, I'd like to take the oil and I'd give a lot of money to the people that were, to the families of the people that were killed, to the incredible wounded warriors that are all over the place. I love these people. These are the greatest people, and they're living in hell. And I'd give lots of money to them, their families. I mean, look at all the people. We spent $2 trillion, thousands of people killed, thousands, tens of thousands of wounded. We have nothing. Right now, Iran is going to take over Iraq, and ISIS has already taken big parts of the wealthy section of Iraq.
Would it be worth creating more wounded veterans in order to do what you want to do there?
Well, I'd see what I would do. You wouldn't have that many, I will tell you. I would just take over the source of their wealth. A big source of their wealth is the oil. And also, if you look at what's going on with the banks, the Iranian banks, the Saudi banks, they're funneling money into ISIS, and yet we help these people. We make this horrible deal for, I mean, one of the worst. I think it'll go down as one of the worst deals ever made by a country with another country. And it's going to lead to, whether it's nuclear destruction, well, you could name lots of bad scenarios, but the deal with Iran is a totally incompetently negotiated transaction.
Wasn't one of the reasons, and I know there are many and it's complex, but that the Allies felt they needed to do a deal with Iran was obviously the nukes, but also Iran has been helpful with ISIS. They've been fighting ISIS for whatever reasons. Maybe they're good or neutral or bad reasons, but they've been fighting against ISIS, not trying to help ISIS.
Well, you know, there's a whole thing going on. First of all, you look at Iran with Syria. Now, ISIS is fighting Syria. We're supposed to be Syria's great enemy, but we're fighting ISIS. You know, you can almost say, why are we fighting ISIS in Syria? Let ISIS fight with Syria and, you know, take up the leftovers or do whatever you have to do. So Assad has to be looking at us and saying, hey, these are supposed to be my enemies, but they're the ones that are fighting ISIS, and ISIS is a very, very big enemy from his standpoint. So there are so many mistakes we're making in the Middle East, it's incredible. But when you look at just that one thing, ISIS wants to go after Syria. We're fighting ISIS in Syria. Now, the other thing is that ISIS is taking oil in Syria. I am all for the oil. I want to take care of ourselves. I want to rebuild this country. We should focus on the wealth of ISIS. We have to do something with ISIS. Well, I was against going after Iraq because it will destabilize the Middle East. I was right. Now we have to do something. When they're chopping off heads because a person's a Christian, and by the way, chop off heads of almost everybody anyway, but you have people that are living in hell. I mean, this is like medieval times, so we have to do something. But I say take the wealth, take the oil, and I also say give lots of money, and there'll be plenty left over, it's peanuts by comparison, to the families of those soldiers that died and to the wounded warriors. Plenty of money to them because they deserve it.
When you think about ISIS and what you do to stop them, how much of it for you is about the military? How much of it for you is about doing other things, political things, to strengthen the regions that they're preying upon?
Well, I think a lot of it is about the military. And I think one of the things I noticed in your poll, I came out way, way ahead of everybody on the economy. And a lot of people weren't surprised to see that. But I also came way out ahead on the military.
And ISIS specifically.
And ISIS. I think that I will be a great sleeper on the military because people wouldn't think it's my strength, but I think it would be one of my strengths. I want to build up our military. I want to have such an incredible military that nobody's going to play games with us, nobody's going to mess with us, and hopefully we won't ever have to use our military. But we need a powerful military. Being in the real estate business, I get so many listings of bases, Army bases, Navy bases, you know, there's so many all the time. A base is for sale. A place where they have soldiers is for sale. I keep saying, how many of these places do they have where I can get all these listings? You take a look, a lot of sales of bases, military bases. I would build up our military so strong, so powerful that nobody will mess with us. And I think actually that will be the thing that I will be really just about the best at.
So does Donald Trump really think that the United States isn't the strongest military in the world? We're going to ask him that right after the break. What do you think so far? Hit me up on social media using the hashtag #TrumpOnCNN, or wait until you hear what comes next. Does Trump really get his take on ISIS and everything you just heard from what he sees on TV? Plus the famous names he says he already has lined up to take on some of our biggest challenges, and why he thinks Hillary Clinton has a better chance of becoming a convict than a winning candidate. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, the biggest reason many Americans support Donald Trump is a pretty simple one. Right or wrong, they think his ability to get rich would translate into making all of us better off by running the economy like a big business. The proof is in the poll. Take a look. Trump, best prepared Republican to deal with the economy. But can he deliver? Listen to what he has to say about job creation, trade deals, and diplomacy. He talks, you decide.
I'll be the greatest jobs president that God ever created. I'll take them back from China, from Japan, from Mexico, which is doing an incredible job. Their leaders are much smarter than our leaders. They're taking tremendous industry. If you look, Nabisco just announced they're building a big plant. They're leaving Chicago. Nabisco, I mean, how American can you get? Nabisco is building a big plant in Mexico. Ford is building a $2.5 billion factory, car plant, manufacturing plant for cars, trucks, and parts in Mexico.
How do you keep them?
You keep them by...
Because the labor's cheap, that's why they go.
For one thing, you keep them by talking to them. But I would say you keep them, if they go there, you know, they'll make cars, and they'll sell them to the United States. No tax, no nothing. Just come right across the border. The next thing you know, they'll have the illegals driving them right across the border. Take them in, drive them in. It's cheaper that way, okay? I mean, you have to talk to these people. You have to go and see the head of Ford.
And they say the labor's cheaper over there.
And you know what? Then we'll say, that's fine. If the labor's cheaper over there, that's good. But you know what? You're going to have to pay a tax to get the cars back in. You're going to have to pay a penalty. And if you put a penalty on, a tariff or whatever you call it, and believe me, China's doing it to us. China dumps all their stuff with us. And I'm not complaining about that. But I have friends that are manufacturers. They cannot get their product into China. So if they're going to do it to us, we have to do it to them.
And they'll say, but then my car's going to cost more for your people.
No, you know what? They're going to make cars here. And maybe a person will buy fewer cars over the course of a lifetime. Who cares? We have to bring back our jobs, Chris. We have to do it. We have no choice.
I hear you, but the question becomes how? You know, in the scenario you just pointed out, you have Ford saying it's cheaper over there and you're going to punish the consumer.
I will tell you, you're not punishing the consumer. And you're strengthening our country. We owe $18 trillion. It's going to be, very soon, going to be $20 trillion that we owe.
Big debt.
Okay? We have to start creating jobs. We have to start creating wealth. Look, we all go to good schools. I go to great schools. You go to great... You don't have to be even a smart... You don't have to be the great student to know when Ford builds this massive plant to build cars, and then they bring them back into our country, no tax, we get nothing. We get nothing. They leave Michigan. I was just in Michigan the other night. Unbelievable people. We had an unbelievable crowd. They leave Michigan. They take them out of Detroit and all over the place, and they go to Mexico. There's no way that helps us. And you're going to have to do something with a tariff at the border. If they're going to make cars over there, if they're going to leave the United States and create jobs for Mexico, not the United States, you know what? It's fine. But they're going to have to pay some kind of a price. We are getting killed on trade.
All right, let me go back.
Interestingly, Carl Icahn agrees with me, and Carl Icahn, as you know, is a great negotiator, and I have many other great negotiators. They are dying to get involved.
But you wouldn't really put him in charge of China.
I would absolutely.
In charge of China?
Can I tell you what?
Please.
In charge of trade.
Because you know what that makes people think. It's like, this is not a business. It's a whole political, governmental thing.
No. It's a business, too. Hey, you can come up with me into this building. You'll see the largest bank in the world from China is in this. I have a great relationship with China, just like I do with Mexico.
Right, but don't you need the diplomacy and all of the policy people?
We have diplomacy now. They're killing us, and they don't even like us, okay? We have diplomacy, so we're diplomatic. They don't like us, and they're beating us. With me, they'll like us, and we'll beat them, okay? How do I have the biggest bank as my tenant? I mean, they're a tenant, and I have them in other... China, I sell tremendous numbers of units, apartments to people from China. They love me. Business Week had a story. What are the 10 things that the Chinese most want? One of the 10 things was anything Trump. And I say, really, is that right? They respect the truth. They understand they're ripping us off. I take a guy like Carl Icahn, you take Henry Kravis, you take so many of the guys that I know, and you say, you know what, I'd like you to watch over the deals that are being made with China because we're getting killed on trade. Believe me, we will be so good. You should get a guy like Carl on. Very smart, great negotiator. We will be so good.
You think he'd take a job like that?
He'd do it in 2 seconds. He's already told me he'd love to do it. They would
to oversee China, the trade deals.
Oversee the trade deals in China. In fact, I'd give him China, I'd give him Japan. He can handle both of them, believe me. But I have others. These are the greatest. We have the smartest, the greatest negotiators in the world. We have the greatest business people in the world. We don't use them. We use people like, I mean, she's a very nice person. My daughter likes her. Ivanka likes her a lot, so she has to be wonderful. Carolyn Kennedy. okay, in Japan. She didn't even know how she got the job. I watched her in 60 Minutes. She said, I asked for the job. They gave me the job. They said, would you like to be ambassador to Japan? I said, really? That was, and this, and you know, as you know, the ambassador to Japan has a big role in trade.
Sure.
I would much rather have Henry Kravis. I would much rather have Carl Icahn. I would much rather have other people doing it. And you know what? We'll come out great. Hey, Chris, I was in Los Angeles, and I saw ships coming in from Japan. The biggest ships I've ever seen. Loaded up with cars. Okay? Thousands of cars. They're pouring off the ships.
Because they're cheaper.
Wait a minute. They're pouring off the ships. You know what we send them? Beef. And they don't want it because they say, we don't want it. And we send them wheat. They don't want it. And you know what the imbalance is between these, you know, over the years, millions of cars and the little stuff we send them? It's massive. We've got to equalize it.
So there is Donald Trump talking to you about why you should trust him to make a difference and what problems will seem very obvious to everyone about the economy. Now, despite his positions, specifically when it comes to immigration and Hispanics, he says they'll love him, which you also heard him say about the Chinese. Now, that takes us to a little peek at vintage Trump. Take a look at this. The interview ends. He's walking over to a group of fans and waves to me to come meet two of them in particular. Look who he singled out.
We love Trump. We're Mexican American.
Win the Latino, we're going to win the Hispanic, right?
I'll work for you, sir.
There is much more on Trump's latest stance on immigration for you in this interview, specifically his new position that kicking people out who were born here is the right thing to do if their parents are undocumented. Now, doesn't the 14th Amendment not allow that? Why Trump says the Supreme Court got it wrong and he can fix it. And Trump says he cherishes women. You've heard that. Does he think they should fight in all areas of the military? Ronda Rousey, you out there? You're going to want to hear this. Let's go back to Donald Trump as commander-in-chief. This isn't just about the plan. It's about the leadership behind it, the ideas behind it. Now, Trump has said some controversial things, like the answer to ISIS is to surround the oil fields in Iraq with U.S. troops, and that he knows not many of those troops will die doing that. That Iran is actually funding ISIS, and that he is a better general than a general who helped take down Saddam. But what really raises eyebrows is that much of the basis for these views comes from what Donald Trump says he sees on TV. Is that true? See for yourself. So you said something earlier about the poll, that you came out ahead on ISIS. That was a surprise to people. One of the reasons...
But not to me, because I talk about it a lot.
I understand, but one of the reasons it might have been surprising is something else you said, which is that you get a lot of your military analysis from watching television.
See, I didn't exactly say. I watch your show. And I watch other shows. And you have one of the best generals, best every retired people.
Great staff.
Frankly, probably better than I could get. In all fairness, you know, what do I know? I'm a man that made a great fortune. I'm going to make our country rich, and I'm going to make our country great. But you know what? You do, and get me the right generals, and I'll see 4 or 5 generals. I'll see all sorts of people. You'll even stoop down to the colonel stuff. You go all over the place. But you have a lot of different people, and so do other shows. And they're really good people. And I watch that, and I read the Times, and I read the Wall Street Journal, and I read lots of other newspapers.
But you need a team,
and I read magazines, especially Time Magazine this week because I'm undercover, okay, so I especially will read that. But I read magazines, and I read other things. Yeah, sure, I need a team. But, you know, by the time you get to a problem, you know, we're talking a long ways away, it's going to be changed. You're going to have a whole different set of, different countries will be run by different people, in all fairness.
But you'll have someone like your opponent, Jeb Bush, who says, I have a policy team, a staff. He doesn't have one.
He says he does, okay? Look, he's a very low-energy person, Jeb Bush. He's got very low energy, which is okay. It's good if you want to lead a long life. But he's a low-energy person. Perhaps he sits down all day long with a particular general. But you know what? I can get a lot of information in a very short time. Now, I've met with numerous people. I was given the biggest award by the Marines the other day, just about one of the biggest civilian awards by the Marines the other day. I was with all of the Marines. I was with the head of the new head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who's a very impressive guy, at the Waldorf Astoria the other night. I was given, one of their most distinguished awards, which was a great honor for me.
So you're saying they respect you?
I think they do. I got the award from them, and they presented it to me, so I think they do. But when I say that, a lot of people thought that was very smart. You know, I watch all of the shows. You get the best people, you know, because even the generals want to be on television, right? Or they're retired generals in many cases. But I see a lot of good things by watching your show and other shows. And it's really nothing to be laughed at or scoffed at.
And if you took it to the next level, then you'd have your own policy advisor.
Sure, and you know what I do is when I watch, and without naming names, but when I watch your different shows, and your show in particular, you're very much into this, but when I watch the different shows, there are certain people that I really think are terrific that I can do better by watching and seeing and reading in the time. And then I know who I maybe want to speak to more so, because you're not going to meet with 400 different people. So I do learn a lot by watching, and I do learn a lot by reading the various newspapers and magazines and everything else, and I really find it to be a fascinating subject.
Today.
And some people agree with me on ISIS. Many of them agree with me on ISIS.
Probably reflected in the poll. Today, what do you think your chances of becoming president of the United States?
Well, I never like to talk about chances. I mean, I'm doing really well. I'm leading every poll. Your polls have been very, very strong. Fox just came out a couple of days ago. It was very similar to your poll, leading everything. I was most happy with your poll because my daughter Ivanka came up to me and my wife came up to me, Melania. And she knows how passionate I am about women, protecting women and taking care of. I cherish women. And they're so important. And when I watched Jeb Bush a week ago not wanting to fund the women's health issues, and he wanted to not fund them, he said, well, I don't think we need to spend $500 billion. I don't think they need that. Well, I thought it was terrible. Now,
he says he only meant Planned Parenthood.
Well, I watched him make the statement. And then he went back and he was, you know, rewound up by his pollsters, and they said, oh, by the way, you made a mistake. So then he said he misspoke. But, you know, how do you misspeak about something like that? And my wife came up to me, my daughter Ivanka, who you know came up to me, and they said, you know, the one thing you should do is talk a little bit about women's health issues because you're so good on it, you know about it, and you cherish women. You want to protect women. And protect them in more than one way. That way, I'll protect them militarily, too, because we are such a target. This country is such a target because we're considered to be weak. We're a weak country. We're considered to be weak now. And I will protect women more than anybody.
You don't think we're considered the strongest country in the world militarily?
I think we are considered to be a country in decline, serious decline. You look at our education, we're number 25 in the world, and we spend far more than anybody else per student.
Would you let women fight in the military? In the Rangers and all the elite groups?
Yeah, I guess the answer is yes, because they're really into it, and some of them are really, really good.
Just had two graduate from the Rangers school?
Yeah, I would also speak to the generals, because I would want to hear that without a political bent. I'd want to hear the truth. I mean, you know, to the public, they say yes, 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 but I would want to hear without a political bent. But I'll tell you what, I know some women that are just, Ronda Rousey is an example, who likes me. Said,
lucky for you.
I'd take her up my side as a fighter. So the answer is yes, I would. I would also want to speak, however, to the military.
So you come on last week and you say, I don't have to talk about what I do with women. I can show what I do with women. We hire them, we put them in positions of excellence, and we pay them often better than their male counterparts if their work warrants it.
Better.
So your office then comes, they provide us what they call their proof of performance. Okay. Here are the jobs, it happens. Good. It's a private company. We don't want to out the people. You'll say if I want to come in there.
Although they would be willing to do it.
That's right. I'll sign an NDA, a non-disclosure. So that goes out. You issue the challenge to the other candidates. The media kind of dismisses it. Yeah. What's your take on why?
Well, for the most part, the other candidates never hired anybody. I have thousands of people that work for me. I've had tens of thousands of people. I've created tens of thousands of jobs. That means I paid for education for all these people. I pay for health care far better than an Obamacare. I mean, I pay for really great. I take great care of my people. You know, I have a great company, as you probably noticed when I did my filings. So I'm very proud of my company. The problem with the other candidates, you know, they might have nobody working for them. They don't have people working for them. They've never created a job before. That's all I do. I'm a job-producing machine.
And that's a big part of his sell to you as to why he should be your next president. Now, we have asked candidates who are running against him and on the Democratic side to provide similar information, and we're waiting on most of it. Now, a couple of small fact things. Trump's claim of getting an award from the Marines, it's not what they say. According to them, quote, the U.S. Marine Corps has not presented any awards to any presidential candidates this year. It's not customary for the Marine Corps to make such presentations. So how do you explain it? Well, the award came from the Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation. It is a charity, but it's not really affiliated with the Marines. Oh, and as for Rhonda Rousey, she tells CNN, I'm not going to vote for Trump. I wouldn't trust the guy with running my country. Now, Donald Trump doesn't play. That's what's been said to us about him. Even when it comes to the Pope, he has a message for Il Papa when he comes to the U.S. next month about his criticisms of capitalism. And stay tuned for a conversation about his family, including his immigrant wife, why she would get to stay under Trump's immigration proposals. It has long been the law of the land that if you are born inside the United States, you are an American citizen, no matter where your parents came from, no matter how they got here. The biggest controversy set off by Donald Trump this week is his plan to say no more. Just being born here, not enough to become a citizen. Now, that's an idea that has little basis in law, but gets a lot of people riled up. So let's test his reasoning on immigration reform and also talk about one man who may not like these ideas very much, the Pope. Immigration. Right. You have people in the GOP worried that you're going to alienate, excuse the pun, the Hispanic population. You may have 28 million.
Chris, you have to
may
do
have
the
28
right
million voters.
You're right.
Pulling the birthright exception
Right.
that may be constitutionally dubious. You shouldn't be taking such an extreme position. What do you say?
I have to do the right thing. It's a time, this country is so politically correct. Nobody wants to take a stance on anything. I was the one that brought up, and I took a lot of heat. You gave it to me, too. I mean, you were one of the leaders that first week and week and a half after I made the announcements, and a lot of people, including yourselves, they were not reading it the way I said it, and that is now fact. And I've been actually complimented by some of the people because I brought up the whole thing of illegal immigration. I'll bet you wouldn't even be asking this question right now had I not put that in my opening statement as a very important.
You definitely changed the nature of the dialogue, I'll give you that. And I certainly never would try to take you out of context. I try to take you at your word and put it in context.
But I'm saying many people did.
But you said, would you then go...
At some point, though, we have to... Look, at some point, we have to be honest with ourselves. It's called, they like to use the word undocumented because it's more political. I don't use that word. They're illegal immigrants. They came over illegally. Some are wonderful people, and they've been here for a while. They got to go out.
But how do you do it in a practical way? You really think you can round up 11 million people?
You know what? At some point, we're going to try getting them back, the good ones. We have a lot of good ones. Same time,
send a mixed message, though, Mr. Trump, because you say you're going to get rid of whole families, but then you say you want them back.
You got to go. They're illegal. We have a country. We have to have a border. We have to have a wall. Mexico will pay for the wall. I get a kick out of these guys that never negotiated. They can't negotiate for their own house.
They're going to pay for a $4 billion wall when you give them like $280 million a year. Why would they say yes?
Because they make a fortune with us. Our companies are moving into Mexico more than almost any other place right now. We're losing our industry. We're losing our business to Mexico. Their leaders are smart as hell. I mean, 300,000, I looked on your show, 300,000 births this year, illegals in our country. That means we picked up 300,000 people that are going to get Social Security. You have people on the border, and in one day they walk over, have a baby, and now all of a sudden we're supposed to pay the baby.
So the citizenship for those babies, you would revoke it now and retroactively?
Number one, the 14th Amendment is very questionable as to whether or not somebody can come over, have a baby, and immediately that baby is a citizen. Okay?
The court has pretty much said that it reads in immigrants there. This is a minority legal opinion you're talking about.
There are many people that totally feel that...
They may want it that way.
Amending is too big a deal. It'll be 2 terms. I'd be in my 2nd term or my 8th year by the time, assuming everything went smoothly, because to amend the Constitution...
Takes a long time,
I believe, especially
on a very divisive issue.
I believe you can win it legally, okay? I believe you can win it legally. And in any event, the parents have to leave. If the parents leave, unless they're very bad people, they're going to take their baby.
75% of the country feels that you should be trying to find a way to let people stay with conditions as opposed to kicking everybody out.
These people, the really good ones, and we have some great ones, we're going to try and expedite so they can come back, but they're going to come back legally. Let me tell you, when you look at Baltimore, when you look at Chicago, when you look at the crime that's going on, You have some of these people are illegal immigrants. I mean, they're illegal. They've come into the country. They're gang members. They're the toughest of the group. They're tough.
Some are bad, but you know most of them are coming in here to fight for the dream.
I'd get them out before I start building the wall, and I will start building that wall soon. I will get them out. The first thing I'm doing is getting the bad ones out, and they're gone, and they're not coming back either. I'm going to increase the hell out of the border in terms of the guards and Border Patrol, who I've gotten to know a lot of them when I went to the border recently, and they're fantastic. They want to be able to do their job. They're stopped from doing their job. Before I even start the wall, and I will start the wall very quickly, you know one of the things that's holding up the wall? Environmental impact statements. Can you believe this? Environmental impact statements.
I think it's got to be low on the list.
But that's one of the things. They can't get environmental permits. Can you believe this? Okay? Believe me. That's all I do is get permits.
What about going after the employers? And this isn't a cheap thing to come at you and say you're one.
That's true. That's true.
You have these employers.
Well, you know what? They've checked all of my buildings, and so far, with all of the jobs I have, Washington, everyone, nobody's found one.
Well, good for you.
Are you impressed?
Good for you. I was impressed the moment you sat down. What I'm saying is you have these employers, the agro companies, the other big manufacturers, they take them in because it's cheap labor. And they get away with it all the time. You never hear about a big case of them getting busted unless something happens and it goes away. Why doesn't anybody mention that as part of the solution?
First of all, we do have people that could do those jobs, and they're unemployed now in this country. Second of all, those good people that have been working with these, I want them to come back in. I want them to go out, but I want them to come back in legally so they can come back and they can work for those companies. I do want them to come back in.
But do you go after the employers who are doing it the wrong way?
The one way you find out who they are is through the employers. Absolutely.
All right, so let me ask you about the Pope. The Pope's coming. Do you want to meet him?
Well, I'm Protestant, but I have great respect for the Pope. I like the Pope. I actually like him. He's becoming very political. There's no question about it. But I like him. He seems like a pretty good guy.
So here's the moment. You meet the Pope. Pope Francis comes.
Right.
There's a translator there.
Right.
And he says, oh, Mr. Trump, this is very nice. And then he says, I want to tell him something. The translator says to you, the Pope believes that capitalism can be a real avenue to greed. It can be really toxic and corrupt. And he's shaking his finger at you when he says it. What do you say in response to the Pope?
I'd say ISIS wants to get you. You know that ISIS wants to go in and take over the Vatican. You have heard that. You know that's a dream of theirs to go into Italy.
He talks to you about capitalism? You scare the Pope?
No, I'm going to have to scare the Pope because that's the other thing. There's only one. Look, the Pope, I hope, can only be scared by God.
Is the ceiling open over here right now?
The Pope, I hope, can only be scared by God. But the truth is, if you look at what's going on, they better hope that capitalism works because it's the only thing we have right now. And it's a great thing when it works properly. In our country, Chris, it has not been working properly.
That capitalism has.
It has not been working properly.
Do you take him seriously when he says?
Between regulation, between all of the Dodd-Frank, between all of the different things that have been imposed, we aren't competitive like we used to be. We have to open up our country to great capitalism. And I don't think the Pope is opposed to capitalism, by the way. I've seen a lot of what he's opposed to, and I don't think the Pope is opposed to capitalism.
And if he is, Donald Trump will tell him ISIS is coming for you. Next, Donald Trump, the family man. How much did his wife and his kids want or not want him to make this run? And his potential first lady would be the first one ever born outside the U.S. Where's she been, by the way? And is her absence a sign that the immigrant doesn't agree with her husband's hardline stance? Ahead. It's hard on a candidate, but you know what? It's often even harder on their loved ones. Is Donald Trump worried about his family? And where's his wife been? Here are his answers. The family. Your kids do great. Everybody says you raise them well. They're making their own paths. Have you thought about what it'll mean for your kids? Because you know it's a lot of, even being Trump's kid is something.
Well, from a family generally. I mean,
but do you think about, man, this is going to be a lot on them?
I sat down with them. I told them, I said, I don't know. This is months ago. And,
but actually, now you're in a very different place.
My wife said something very interesting. She's my pollster, okay? She said, if you actually announce, you're going to win. I said, what? She said, I see the reaction.
That's a supportive partner, by the way.
No, it's great. She's either the most wonderful person or she's very smart to say that. But she said, that if you actually announce, because nobody thinks you're going to run, but if you and that's really what's happened. Once I announced, people said, then they said, well, will he file this paper and then that paper, and then will he file his financials? And then the financials turned out to be much bigger than anyone thought. They thought I wouldn't want to file the financials. I'm very proud. I mean, what I did, I built an unbelievable company. But she said to me, you know that if you actually announce, you know you're going to win. I said, I don't know that. But the response has been pretty amazing.
But what do you think about that, though? Like you say, your wife, is she going to campaign for you? Is she ready to be first lady? Because she's been quiet on this so far.
She has been, and purposely, and you know, I haven't asked her to do anything, and she would certainly like to. Ivanka, you know very well. A lot of respect for you.
Ivanka could be president.
She's got a lot. She could be president. She'd be great. She's got a lot of respect for you. Got a lot of respect for your brother. Tremendous respect for your brother.
So her judgment's questionable. She's half right on that.
Now I'm starting to worry about her. She will be fantastic.
But you think you'll put Melania out there? You'll put your kids out there?
They want to be out there. They believe in what I'm saying. And I will say, from the women's health issue standpoint, Melania is unbelievable.
She would want to own something like that?
And Ivanka, I think she'd want to be involved in it. She feels very strongly, that's why when she saw Bush the other day knocking it, it really bothered her that could happen.
One other thing about her. When you married her, everybody says the marriage is great. You're a testament to, one of the marriages that seems to be working these days. When you got married, she became a citizen. She was here working legally.
Right.
She ever get mad at you about how you talk about immigrants and say, hey, I came over here on a visa. Now you want to get rid of people's visas?
She agrees with me because she went through a long process to become a citizen. It was very tough.
Oh,
and she went through a long process to become a citizen of this country. And she thinks it's a wonderful process to go through. And when she got it, she was very proud of it. You know, she came from Europe, and she was very, very proud of it. And she thinks it's a beautiful process when it works. Now, we can expedite. One of the things I really want to do, I want to take in really talented people, too. You know, in Silicon Valley, they can't get talent. I mean, no matter what you do, you can't get talent. And so I want to take in people from Europe, from Asia, from all over the world that have talent. If you graduate number one in your class from Harvard or the Wharton School of Finance or Yale, and you're from another country, they throw you out of the country. You can't come back in. I don't want to do that. I want to keep these really talented people. Let them go to Silicon Valley. Let them go all over the place because that's what we need. And I want people to come into the country, but I want them to come in legally.
I know you have a big appearance to get to in New Hampshire. You're going to be talking about the drug problem. Thank you for taking the time. You're always welcome to be talking about what matters.
Great honor.
So